Hi guys, it's been about 24 hours since the initial Monk announcement, and now that the dust has settled a little bit, we've had some time to analyze all the material that Tipsoft has released and also answered some of the questions in the forum thread. Also, we've had a lot of discussions in my Discord server, and basically there's a lot to cover. We've come to the conclusion that almost certainly Monk will break the game in many unexpected ways. Really hard to predict what's going to happen. Good luck to Tipsoft in trying to manage it and make it balanced. We're not so confident. So anyway, figured I'd make a video already discussing everything we know. Everything that in my Discord server we've chatted about with regards to like existing content that needs to be changed or fixed to work for Monk and all the possible problems associated with that. We'll also cover what I think Monk will be good at and where it will fit in with regards to like bossing and team hunting. And finally, I will cover some sort of random considerations that I've thought about that might, that I want to know about. Stuff like what potions will the Monk drink, for example, right? Will he use mana potions, spirit potions? It's not clear, and things to consider. There will be so many things that will need to be changed for the Monk to join the game, so to speak. And yeah, basically just kind of want to spitball and get these things out there in this video. So first of all, let's just get into the stuff that we know so far from the featured article as well as from the comments from the community managers. So first of all, on Tipsoft's official website, there is a little note which says that it's a planned release for Q2, which means Q2, which means April, May, June of this year. This is not too unexpected with the test server starting late February, with how much testing there will need to be done. That seems pretty reasonable. I would expect sort of early May release of Monk if I had to guess. Something else this tells us is that most likely this is not planned to be part of the summer update. This is planned to be a standalone update, mid-update, sort of just to release the Monk, which is great because testing both Monk and a whole new summer update would probably be too much. So this means we should get our hands on the Monk within the next sort of 3 months or so. Next, we know that Tipsoft is not planning any changes to the party shared experience formula, so it will still cap out at 4 different vocations where it will give you 100% experience bonus. Now, this is very controversial, and this, I think, will potentially cause problems. I understand why they do it because, people already complain about having to organize and schedule 4 different people to hunt at once. Now, if you increase the party shared experience formula to scale up to 5 players, then that kind of incentivizes you to find 5 players to play with at all different times, which is even more of a pain. On the other hand, the worry is that if they don't change it, people will just try and hunt with 4 players, which means that one of the vocations will eventually just be out of favor, right? The content creators, the YouTubers will come up with the optimal 4 vocation setup, and then the 5th vocation, which isn't part of that, will be unpopular. Which again is not something really Tipsoft wants or the player wants, because some of the characters people have invested almost decades at this point into them, and suddenly them becoming kind of obsolete would be a shame. So I think this is tricky. I don't actually know how to solve this so that both 4 vocation and 5 vocation team hunts are just as just as powerful. Don't know. We're going to have to see. A lot of balancing to do here. Really tricky, but bottom line is Tipsoft say they don't have any plans to change the formula at this point. Also, Tipsoft says there is no way to change, they're not planning to allow to change vocation, so basically all the monks will have to be brand new characters. Now, this has a few impacts that, I don't know if everyone immediately realizes. First of all, this will have a huge impact on retro hardcore servers and the value of characters there. What you'll be able to do is create a brand new level, a new character, and then purchase experience by killing high-level characters in retro hardcore. This means, basically that the value of retro hardcore characters will go up massively. High-level teams, currently, over 2,500 levels, they have share experience with like level 1,800 or something. They will want to invest into getting a monk to like that level as early as possible. So they will pay insane amount of money to just create a brand new monk on a new server, on a retro hardcore server. Get it leveled to like 1,500, transfer it over to one of those old yellow, optional or open PvP servers to get them into the party. crazy stuff. I think, like I said, I think the price for XP on retro hardcore servers will like skyrocket fewfold. Yeah, definitely big impact there. And yeah, this is a consideration for high level teams, right? If you're level over 2000 team and you don't have the sort of budget to, basically level up a monk on a retro hardcore server, you're looking at a few years without being able to hunt with a monk. So if monk is really strong, really powerful, all those high level teams will be at a disadvantage. They will not be able to utilize that, which will be a shame. Don't know how that's going to be really managed, but that is currently how it stands, that there will be no way to change vocation from existing characters to monk, which I can understand. I think it would be technically tricky, so I'm not too surprised about it, but it does kind of make it a bit tricky to balance existing high level teams. So I'm not sure how that's going to go. We're going to have to see. Next point is no vocation rebalanced is planned as of this point, which they're saying that it will be monitoring how the impact of monk affects the balance of team hunts, etc. Personally, I have to say I'm highly skeptical that no vocation rebalance will be necessary. I think, while I love Tibia, I don't have that much confidence in Tipsoft themselves to be able to do something like this. Like, no developer, I think, after 28 years of 4 vocations is able to just throw in a 5th vocation and then not be a necessary rebalance. I think the monk, no matter how much testing is done, will just blow up the meta game. I don't think Tipsoft is super fast with reacting. I hope they will be in this case. But my personal prediction is that we will probably release monk. For the first few months, they will be tweaking monk itself without tweaking other vocations to try and get monk in line with the other vocations. But that will not be sufficient. And maybe the early 2026 will have like a vocation rebalance too, with like actual changes to all the other vocations as well. That's what I'm expecting. We'll see how it goes. Maybe Tipsoft do an amazing job and it won't be necessary, but I would be very shocked. Moving on, we'll also obviously need new offline training statues for fist fighting as well as exercise weapons. There's going to be interesting how they fit some of those training statues in some of those cities, as there's not that much space, but whatever, I guess that's the mapper's job. They'll figure that out. There will be necessary changes to existing content to accommodate monk, and this is my whole next slide that I will talk about. It's a big one. Loads of stuff in there, loads of tricky stuff that Tipsoft will have to figure out how to do. We'll talk about it in a minute. And finally, just from the screenshot that Tipsoft shared, we can already see that there will be an indicator for harmony charges, which I expect are those the grayed out things here. So I expect you can have up to 5 harmony charges, and maybe based on how many harmony charges you spend, that's how much it empowers your spell, something like that. And I guess this purple thing is the serenity indicator. So basically this monk is currently in serene state because there's no monsters around him, hence it's this purple color. And I guess if he wasn't in serenity, maybe that would be grayed out just like the harmony charges. And we can also see from this screenshot that they still use health and mana as resources, right? There won't be some other new resource like spirit or whatever. So good to know. And this basically sums up what I sort of expect from what we've seen so far. So we can move on to the next slide, which is basically changes to existing content that will need to happen to accommodate the monk. So first of all, we just have a few quests, obviously, that probably need to be changed. So stuff like Desert Quest, currently it would be impossible for the monk to complete it, right? You have to have the item for each vocation, you have to be in the right slot. Definitely need to change Desert Quest. Now, I did not have it on my bingo card that Desert Quest will be getting reworked in 2025 in Tibia, but here we are. Really exciting stuff. Moving on, we have Pits of Inferno. Now, this one strictly does not need to be changed, right? The monk might just not have a role to play in opening up Pits of Inferno. You might still need all the other 4 vocations, because I don't know where Tipsoft's going to fit in that little section of the map, a 5th lever to pull. So maybe they will just leave it as is, and monk will just not be necessary to open up Pits of Inferno. Then there's also like Elemental Spheres quest, which will need to be changed in some way. But yeah, we'll have to see how they do that. Definitely, not too bad. A little bit tricky, but probably doable for Tipsoft. Moving on, we'll probably see changes to the Forgotten Knowledge quest. We'll need a new boss there, most likely. Or they will just add the Fist Imbuement, which we'll now need to have to one of the existing bosses, perhaps. And maybe add it retroactively to all the people who've already completed it. Probably more likely they will add it to an existing boss. I don't expect them to add a whole new boss just for fist fighting. So maybe the boss, I don't remember which one that grants like sword, axe, and club fighting. I think it's the green one. maybe that one will grant the fist imbuement now as well. But anyway, something to change. Certain bosses will need to be changed altogether, like for example the world boss Abomination, which shouts out each vocation, will definitely need to have Monk included. Then we also have the Grave Count Vlakrov, also with their summons, that will need to be changed, definitely. Stuff like this. Probably Dark Tice will need to be reworked, right? It's the Soul War area with the Sorcerers, Druids, Paladins and Knights. They'll probably need to have a new creature called whatever, Dark Monk or something like that. It's interesting. That might have quite a big impact on this hunting ground, might make it much more viable, for example. Interesting. I suppose they don't strictly need to change it. They can maybe just leave it like this. I don't know. No, they probably will need to add like a Dark Monk. So that might have a big impact on that hunting ground. Quest rewards will need to be updated for Monk Gear. And I think Tipsoft have hinted at this happening. So for example, Soul War, Rotten Blood, Grim Opera will probably have an updated loot table, right? They'll have new Monk items. The Monk needs to have a full set of gear added to it from like level 8 all the way up to like level 600 right now. I mean, that is a ton of items, right? That is probably, you need like 5-6 items minimum, probably more, like 10 items per item slot. They'll probably need to add like 80 Monk exclusive items in a single update. That's going to be very tricky. And like I say, this will make, people wanting to rerun stuff like Soul War, Rotten Blood, Grim Opera to get those high demand Monk items. And similarly, this goes for other bosses, right? You probably will want to improve the loot table for bosses like Timiro Baron. You'll want to add like some Falcon Monk items, some Cobra Monk items, right? Which is kind of interesting because I think this actually opens up those bosses a little bit again and makes them more worthwhile to hunt. I know that at least most of my friends no longer kill this kind of stuff, no longer kill like Scarlet because, all the items are worth like 1kk, it's not really worth. Only the most dedicated pasta farmers usually kill those bosses on my world at least, so that could be interesting, right? If they get an updated loot table with some Monk items as well, and this will happen across all bosses throughout the game, right? Even like Ratmiral will probably get some Monk items, etc., etc. So very interesting stuff. Similarly, gold token and silver token weapons and armors probably need an update, right? You'll want to have like Fists of Destruction, which sounds like the best item name in the game. So definitely looking forward to that one. You'll need your armor for the 100 silver tokens to be added as well. I mean, it needs to have, everyone else has them, so a monk should have them as well. Similarly, you want an Umbral fist weapon. Interesting to see if it's going to be any good. Obviously, Umbrals currently aren't very good. Maybe just a spellbook is good. So if Tipsoft is adding them today, they'll probably make them powerful enough to be used, right? So maybe this will be quite a useful Umbral weapon. Potentially, it's time to stock up on clusters, etc. Maybe people will be creating a lot of Umbrals after the update, and probably many more, right? This is just something we were spitballing. We've put together in like 20 hours on the Discord, probably a lot more stuff. And a lot of this is tricky, right? A lot of this is not super simple. I am not surprised Tipsoft have been working on this for a long time because there's a lot of stuff to add. I'm particularly interested in the balancing of all the new items that they have to add. Like I mentioned, probably like 80 new pieces of like gear, most of it like end game gear that they need to balance. I mean, in a regular update, they add like 10 pieces of gear, 15 pieces of gear maybe. Across 4 vocations, and it takes weeks of balancing and talking to players to get them to the right level. And now they have to add 80 from like level 8 to level 600, right? Tricky. I think it's definitely tricky. So good luck again to Tipsoft. And they will indeed need a lot of feedback from us on the test server. So I think everybody should be involved. Anyway, moving on to the next slide, which will be where do I see Monk fitting in the team hunt and solo hunting and bossing. And obviously, just before I mention this, I have like very minimal information. I'm just reading between the lines of what Tipsoft are saying. So this may be totally off base, but I'm going to do my best to work with the information that I have. So first of all, I expect the Monk to be a high skill ceiling vocation. What this means is if we look at other games, for example, like League of Legends with high skill ceiling champions, what happens is that the best players in the world make that vocation look very, very powerful, broken, while the average players will be basically no-handing and will be very, very bad at the vocation. We'll see whether Tipsoft manages to find the right balance of making it, a demanding vocation, but also powerful vocation. Unfortunately, in other competitive video games, what usually happens is that those high skill ceiling vocations, characters are nerfed to the level where when they're used very well, it's like the baseline level. So anybody who doesn't use them very well is just really bad at them. We'll see. We'll see. This is what it seems like. Maybe it's not going to be that difficult. I don't know. Don't know yet. But this is my current expectation. So when I start making guides for the monk, I expect a lot of people being like, oh, fake numbers or whatever, because that happens already with all the other vocations. So we'll see. I think there will be a high skill ceiling for this one, and a lot of discrepancy between the best players and sort of more average players, let's say. Moving on, it definitely sounds like it's going to be quite awkward to get the most of the monk in the party. It's definitely sounds like the monk has to be in the serene state to be a worthwhile addition to the party, but it adds extra constraints that aren't really present currently in the game. So I'm kind of worried that we may end up in a situation where if it's really tricky to get that serene state online, it may just not be worth to use a monk, right? Maybe, some sort of like average skill player parties will just be like, I don't want to deal with the difficulty of having a monk in a party. Let's just not use him. Obviously, top power gamers and stuff will still use monks if the monks provide enough utility. But I think the average sort of party may not be interested in using a monk if it's too awkward and too tricky to make it work. So we're going to have to see. This will depend very much on the way spells and damage from the monk works, right? I don't know what size of the abilities it's going to have, if it's going to be like Divine Caldera size, or if it's going to be like an front sweep Exori Min size, and that will dictate where the monk has to stand next to the EK, and how many monsters are going to be on him, and how often he's going to be in this serene state. We're going to have to see. All this will come out in practice. This is just my little consideration that it may well be quite awkward to get the most of it, because by the sounds of it, if the monk is not in this serene state, it's not going to be a worthwhile addition to the party. Whether it works out that way, we're going to have to see. But I'm just a little bit tiny worried that some people may just be like, I don't want to use a monk. It's too tricky. It makes the team hunt awkward. I don't want a monk, right? Maybe. We end up to see. Moving on, I expect it's going to be a pretty strong solo hunter. I think almost undoubtedly the overall balance will land where monk in serene state is going to be just a little bit better than every other vocation, and not in serene state is going to be like a little bit below every other vocation. What this means is that for solo hunting, monk will be just that a little bit better than all the other vocations. That's my expectation, because obviously if you didn't pick up on this, monk will always be in the serene state when solo hunting. So potentially we have some potential here for monk being a very strong solo hunter. Maybe it will basically start competing with EKs and RPs for like some of those popular spots like Roshamel or Summer Court, etc., etc. That's my expectation. If I had to bet money on it, I would say the monk is going to be a pretty strong solo hunter. Another question here is potentially maybe there's going to be a multiple monk party, right? From other games as well, in my experience, when you have multiple sources of healing that work on each other, like two monks healing each other plus healing themselves, you can end up in pretty broken infinite sustain loops, which might make multiple monk parties pretty powerful. Now, this will obviously depend on the serene state. I don't know if a monk duo can effectively sustain double serenity state. Maybe not. On low levels, they probably can, because you're just blowing up monsters anyway. But maybe not on like a end game spawns. Or maybe like an EKRP monk team hunt, right? Cut out the druids, just have like 4 powerful relatively tanky vocations, right? No mages. Have the double heal from the monk plus some sustain from paladin and EK. Maybe that would be a good team hunt. Like I don't know, but this is something to consider. I think always whenever in a video game characters with healing are added and sustain, it tends to get out of hand. So I'm going to be testing out duo monks for sure. Maybe this EKRP monk will be something to watch out for as well. And sort of related to the strong solo hunter, I also think, goes hand in hand. That is probably going to be a strong bosser. You're probably always going to be on in this serene state in bosses. So again, in my opinion, this little benefit that monk will have over vocations in the serene state will probably also make him a pretty strong powerful bosser. So how powerful we're going to see, I don't know how early he's going to be able to solo Oberon, for example, but probably I expect him to be pretty strong. We'll see again in practice without some more info. It's kind of hard to see, kind of hard to tell for sure. And now we move on to the last few things I want to talk about, just kind of random thoughts. First of all, the first new servers that launch after Monk is added, in my opinion, will be hilarious. I fully expect the population of those servers to be like 99.9% Monks, especially if new servers are launched right alongside the Monk launch. I don't know if Tipsoft will or will not do that. But it will be hilarious. Like, Monk gear will be super expensive on those worlds, you know, like hundreds and hundreds of KKs for like Cobra and Falcon items. I have no doubt about it. On the other hand, if you're not interested in the Monk himself, those will be the best servers in history to start to play any other vocation. You'll have no problem finding a team hunt. You'll have no problem finding cheap items, right? Nobody will be looking for those Druid, Sorcerer, Knight, and Paladin items compared to the Monk items. And presumably they will all still have exactly the same drop rates. So very, very good servers to start as a non-Monk, but absolutely hilarious and crazy as a Monk player. It's going to be insane. You're going to struggle to get your Monk items, I'm sure of it. So we're going to have to see how that goes, but I do expect that will be pretty damn funny. Another consideration, what will be the health and mana gain ratios per level? I don't know. I'm leaning towards something like 10-10 or 15-10 maybe. It seems like it's not supposed to be a super melee EK class, so I would expect at least 10 mana per level. On the other hand, I don't know if it can have quite as much health as an EK. I don't know, maybe 10-10, which is worse than a Paladin. Maybe 10-15, just like a Paladin. I'm not sure. We're going to have to see. This is something to consider. I would say maybe 10-10, and then they would just have like more cap, for example. Don't know. But it's something to consider. I'm definitely looking forward to find out more about this kind of stuff. And similarly, what potions will the Monk drink? I think if I had to guess now, I would expect that they will be able to drink ultimate health potions, but not supreme health potions. And they'll probably be able to drink great spirit potions and great mana potions. Now, this kind of means that they don't have access to all of these best potions, right? If they don't have access to supreme health potions, ultimate mana potions, and ultimate spirit potions, makes them kind of weak. So I don't actually know how they will solve it. I don't know what access they'll have. Maybe they will get totally new potions, just Monk specific. We're going to have to see. Also, another kind of interesting point that, you know, I'm thinking about, and I'm excited to find out about. And finally, my final thing I wanted to mention is that the Monk will also need a new familiar. Now, as we all know, currently existing familiars in the game, pretty weak, if not useless. You know, the Paladin one is pretty good at like level 200, 300, then becomes obsolete by like level 500. So now Tipsoft have had a few years of experiences of the familiars in the game. So I would like to think that for the Monk, they will create a familiar that would be usable in 2025. So perhaps the Monk will actually get a pretty good familiar. Maybe I'm just, you know, being all copium about it, and maybe it'll be just as garbage as all the other familiars. But hey, a man can dream, right? Maybe it'll be something decent. I sure hope so. But definitely something Tipsoft also need to add, which might be quite interesting. And honestly, this is everything I want to talk about. Everything we've sort of know so far, everything that I'm able to predict and see what impact the Monk has. And I think you'll all agree with me that there's a lot of potential for the Monk to just break the game in very many ways. A lot of things need to be changed. But, you know, I am super excited for it. I really can't wait for the test server already, for all the other featured articles. I hope you are excited too. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you think, if you agree or disagree with any of my points I made here. And thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.